Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well, and I think I'm going to say that cyclocross is coming.
Cross is coming. Actually, I literally, as I started talking, just placed an order for a second tent. So we'll have another 10 by 10, which you know what that means?
I don't know, expo space?
No, it means, well, yes, but it means it's going to be sunny and warm and dry all season because I have gotten a second tent in the event of pouring rain, because we are going to be at all of the Ontario Cross Cups this season, doing some really fun stuff with the Shred Girls, hanging out with our Consummate Athlete crew, and yeah, just lots of fun stuff. We're coming back to cyclocross. You know, we just had our 10-year anniversary of being married, and cross really is what brought us together.
Yep, we met around cyclocross. So we wanted to sort of support the local community, and you were getting the itch to get back to bike racing. And as you say, that's sort of like the main discipline you've raced in your life. So we figured, why not give that a try and support the local community? And so today's episode, we're talking to Bill Schieken of CXHairs fame. He has lots of other things he's famous for, but that's sort of like he has a Substack you should subscribe to, and a podcast that talks about all things cyclocross, and then also sort of is related to the Wide Angle Podium Network that we had our podcast on for quite a number of years, and also hosts things like the Grodeo podcast, which is also great. So you can check those all out, and you should definitely support those. But we wanted to have Bill on just to sort of talk about the state of cyclocross. He's been doing a lot of retrospective episodes, and even a survey that he ran sort of about the state of cyclocross. So we talk around all those things. And I try to keep pulling both of you as, we'll say, old hat in the cyclocross game. Or it was this OG, you're original members of the cyclocross.
OG, yeah.
And maybe not you weren't way back, but you were there in sort of when it peaked in North America, I think.
I feel like I was there.
So you weren't there in the 70s and 80s.
No, it wasn't really in the US in the 70s and 80s. I would say, and someone will probably argue with me about that and say that it kind of existed, and sure. But I would say I was there in the pivotal growth years for American cyclocross, the legendary years that we look back on so fondly. But while I was there when it was still kind of in its growth phase, to where, it really hit apex mountain, if you will, and where we're gonna say the bubble kind of burst a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we talk about, is that sort of cycling wide? Is it already it is sort of a niche sport? What is cyclocross? And as I say, I tried to push you to on what could cyclocross be versus what trying to get it back to exactly what it was. Is there a place for that? What is that place? And so we talk about some ideas around events. Bill does run. I try and say it's the biggest race. It's not the biggest race, but the second biggest race in the U.S. PanAm American Championship, which is also DCCX. So we talk about that race and what that means and how they run it. And we try and talk around things can you race your mountain bike and cyclocross bike and gravel bike, at this, and maybe how we get gravel folk to come and try cyclocross.
Yeah. And I think, and maybe this is just my opinion because I'm now focusing on local stuff, but I really do feel like local cross is kind of coming back into the zeitgeist a little bit. People are missing it. People have been doing gravel for a few years now and are starting to kind of really crave the more community-oriented sports. And if you haven't done cyclocross before, just for maybe a little bit of context for our newer listeners, we're talking about a 45-minute race, a 2-kilometer course where you can pretty much always see the start finish. You're on grass, you're on dirt, you're on maybe a little bit of pavement. It's so much fun, and really, it's just the best as far as community goes because you have so much time to connect with other people. You're always racing against someone. It's not like gravel or road where if you get dropped from the main group, you might be on your own for 7 hours. You will always have someone relatively close to you on the course. And it is a ton of fun. If you haven't been to one, look up any cyclocross race around you. Even if you don't race it, just go volunteer at it or just go hang out at it. And you will just see so much happiness and this love of bike racing.
Mm-hmm. And I should say, on that note, like sometimes people get really nervous about the cyclocross limits because, I mean, we talk about it even in the episode and we're a little unsure. So I wanted to make sure here in the intro that we do. From what I can see, and I think this is true in Canada and in the US, like as long as you're not trying to race the elites or the juniors or the U23s, like a true UCI race, I don't think it matters a ton about what you're racing. Like maybe if you do nationals as a master, then they would start measuring things like tire size. But I think for anyone who's just like, I want to go and try the race the first time I just learned what cyclocross was because Molly explained it to me. I want to try this at our, here in Collingwood at our local race. Or down at Christie Cross is another one we really like in Toronto. But of course, there's cyclocross everywhere. I think most of the events now have clued into like, just let people show up with a bicycle and race. And then like down the road, we can convince you that you should get one of these really specific cyclocross bikes. But
if you can find one.
Right. They don't exist, but you can get one. Yeah. And so I think like trying to get people to participate. And I do think for gravel riders, like I'm going to try and push a bunch of my gravel purists to come, even just for the clinics that are around these or the pre-ride or, do the fun race, because I do think that it is the fastest way to make gravel cycling go better for you is to learn these skills in a very condensed and, as you say, really safe environment. Everything has risk, but the fact that it's mostly grass, you're not going that fast, your car is right there, there's usually medics right there as well, compared to a 100-mile gravel race where you're alone. If we look at like Unbound or something where there's lightning and you're taking shelter in a ditch or something like that, right? So
yeah. And because I'm looking at it, I will add one more story about how much we love cyclocross. So, like I say, we just had our 10-year anniversary, and
this is our wedding anniversary.
Our wedding, yeah, we already hit our 10-year podcast anniversary a few months ago. But at our wedding, my parents thought it would be really cute because they knew how much we love cyclocross, and in cyclocross, ringing a cowbell is this huge part of how you're cheering for people. So everyone at cross races, cowbells are ringing like crazy. It's so cool. And so my parents got us these custom cowbells for all of the guests, and they handed them out secretly, so we didn't know about it. And when like we got pronounced husband and wife, everyone pulled out their cowbells and started ringing them. The thing is, neither of us noticed that it was happening because we're so used to cowbells that it wasn't until afterwards when we were watching the wedding video that we were like, oh, there were a ton of cowbells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess we had just decided that those weren't like relevant cues or something when you're racing, so you just ignore them.
Yeah, exactly. We were so good at tuning out the cowbell noise that we were just like, yeah, obviously there's cowbells going. We're celebrating. It just seemed really natural. So yeah, cyclocross is a very important part of our life story at this point, and I'm really, really excited to come back to it. So looking forward to it, and excited about this episode because I think it brought back some of my favorite cyclocross memories, but also gave me a little bit of hope for the future of cyclocross and the fun side of bike racing that we don't always focus on.
So again, hopefully we'll see some of you out at cyclocross races. Again, come and participate if you want. We'd love you to participate, but also just come and spectate if you're in the area and hang out and whatever, right? Like any event, you can volunteer. You can just, a lot of these events will have food vendors, if not like a beer garden perhaps. So you can really enjoy the scene and take it in, and fall is a great time to do that.
Absolutely. All right. Before we get into this, quick shout out to our sponsors over at Payable. So if you've ever needed to take payments but didn't want to set up a whole website to do it, Payable plus Google Forms lets you do exactly that. And you can find out more. You can grab our favorite templates and you can get started for free and in under 10 minutes. Just head to payableapps.com/athlete.
And I should say, Payable is also the title sponsor of our local cyclocross race. So they are also big supporters of things that we do, but also cyclocross. So there you go. If you needed another reason to give Payable a try, they are also supporting cyclocross.
Boom. All right. Enjoy this episode with Bill Schieken. Bill Schieken, welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. We realized it's been 8 years, which in bike years is kind of like an eternity, right? It's like how many disciplines have like gone in and out of style since that time?
Yeah,
so welcome back.
No, thank you very much. It's good to be. It truly was a different time. I mean, we're talking pre-pandemic. We're talking, tons of things that have changed in cycling and bike racing and everything else from that time. Eras of riders have come and gone. So yeah, it's definitely in entirely new environment, and we have to approach it as such.
Yeah.
Well, and you've just gone through on CXHairs, your podcast, which we're a huge fan of. You've gone through and done a great, just sort of like pulling back some of those, I guess, previous characters from different eras and sort of talking about the heydays of cyclocross. And then also you did a survey. So I'm wondering now that you've gone through that sort of process, where are you at when we come into this season for cyclocross with that historical sort of perspective and this survey that you've sort of done as well?
Yeah. So, you know, the series, which I was loosely calling "What Your Dad Goes On About When He Goes On About Cyclocross," was trying to just bring back some of these things that I think that we all talk about a lot as being foundational to the sport as we know. I think all of us kind of got into it at around the same time, and it was a really good time to be into it. I mean, I think I did my first race in 2003, but by the time 2010, 11, 12, this was kind of the heyday of North American cyclocross, and a lot of things that were talked about at that time that you get these older folks continue to talk about that I don't think people in their 20s even know about, or they heard about, but they don't understand. Like the USGP was the big one. It's like, so I wanted to talk to Joan Hanscom and just sort of say, look, this is what we used to do in America with cyclocross. We were spending millions of dollars on the sport. Every major player in the cycling industry was clamoring to sign people to teams and to have big races and to have live streams. We did that. Like, it's now is like, how do we do that? It seems to be the question. It's like, and people, that's what people bring up. They go, well, we did it. It was the USGP. So I wanted to do that. And then even with Jeremy and Behind the Barriers, which was another huge sort of, before every gravel racer was, part of their contract was, you need to create content. You need to have, the cool down show. You need to do whatever you need to do. And these are all cool things that people are required to do. Jeremy was kind of on the forefront of that.
And like pre-YouTube, basically, right? Like I think that's what you pointed out.
It was on Vimeo. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, and before that, you have Adam Meyerson's Transitions DVD. Do you remember how hard it was to like get a copy of that DVD? Like you'd pass it around. I remember like getting it from teammates and then like passing it to like the next like crew of Rutgers cyclocross racers as like almost like this like benediction, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had to go to the dark web to see cyclocross in Europe, and then you had to know somebody who knew somebody who had a dubbed copy of Transitions, and Sam, of course, who was behind that, moved on and did Behind the Barrier, so he was a huge part of this too, and I think that part of my kind of motivation to do this type of stuff is kind of like what we chatted briefly before we started recording, is like, we don't want to be down on the sport, but it's not where it once was. So I just, let's talk about some of these things that really worked and see what we can do. I know not on that level, like until Specialized and Trek decides that cyclocross exists again, and every other a bike builder, we're on a different level, but let's try to be inspired by these things and see what we can build about it. And what kind of grew out of that for me personally is, and this is not a novel idea, is that we need to kind of re-embrace what got us all into the sport at first, is the ridiculousness of what we were doing in North America cyclocross. I know this is a very serious sport in Belgium, in Europe, even in the US for our elite riders. And 98% of what I do is wanting to cover them and support them and make sure that we have an avenue for young riders to compete at the level that the rest of the world is competing in the discipline. At the same time, let's have fun. Let's go back. Let's go and race again. Let's go and do it without having any pressure. Let's go support our local events. Again, before we hit record, you were talking about like getting bikes together and all this stuff for racing cyclocross. My whole thing is like, get a bike together. Have a bike. You don't need a pit bike. Yeah, you might not finish every race, but oh well. If you go in the pits, especially in an amateur race, you're going to be at the back anyway. So just go out there, put no pressure on yourself, run what you brung, and let's just sort of re-embrace what the sport was, and hopefully make it fun to a point that we can get people, unlike myself, who are not in their 50s, to enjoy the sport and get into it, because that's enough. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm gonna let you, but that's
No, I
just a
love it.
huge part of it. That if you look at that bell curve, and we can talk about the survey that I did, it just keeps moving to the right. I am 57 years old. I am the most popular cyclocross age in America. That's bad.
uh,
Oh my God, that whole thing was the pull quote right there, especially that finisher. That was perfect right there. And I mean, it's funny. Last night, as we were driving to a friend's for dinner, I literally said almost all of those things. Like I don't need the pit bike. Like run what you brung. I've got my old Trek from like what is it, like 2020 or something. Like it's fine. I might grab my boots from New Jersey that is still canty brake, like just whatever, and maybe that'll go in the pit. But like I think for me, actually, because I like did both, right? Like I had fun when I started, then I got really serious about it, and then I kind of exited the sport when sort of I came up here. There's, it went through a weird phase. I stopped racing and did other stuff, and now I feel like I can actually come back and just like love it again, and no pressure, just have fun being terrible at it, and I'm so excited for that.
I wonder, I sort of had like some quick questions that I'll maybe just sprinkle some in here. Like, why do either of you, and I'll go first, but why do you like why would you participate in a cyclocross? For me, it's I love pre-riding and the skills and just breaking down the course and like doing that with like maybe a friend or two. Like for me, that's like the best part of cyclocross. What for Molly, what would you say it would be?
It was the people, like, and
Yeah.
I don't even need to race to have that.
Yes,
Like,
Molly invented you'd get journalist jobs that you could do. Yes,
yeah,
okay.
pretty much.
And Bill, what about you? Why do you like cyclocross?
I think that's what when I got into it, that's what I found was the community, and that I loved, and that, the people that I'm still doing dumb things with today are the people that I met in cyclocross 20 years ago. Uh, for me, before that, I love process. I love trying to figure things out. And I also, at least I think more so then than now, can be competitive. And I was doing other competitive sports. I played basketball, I played hockey, I did all these things. And, I became less competitive in those pursuits, and it became really frustrating. And I couldn't deal well with that. I wasn't having fun anymore. So I found something new that I gave myself permission to be bad at, and that was cyclocross. And that lasted for a good amount of time. I will not argue that I ever got good at it, but I got to a level where I was competitive for my age and category. And then things happened, and then I wasn't anymore. And then I found myself falling into that same pattern, that this is no longer as fun as it was because I'm not as competitive as I was. And I did, as far as the process goes, as far as figuring it all out, I did all that. I wrote this book. I did all of these things. I interviewed all these people. I was like, I did the Sven stuff. I was like, I kind of know how this sport works now. I know what you have to do, even though I'm not doing it, to be really good at it. And I think that just kind of got in the way of my enjoying it. Plus, it's the type of thing that I know you all are way too familiar with, is that the more you get into the thing that you love, the more it becomes a job, the less you actually are able to do the thing. You like bike mechanics are always talk
I
about
was
this.
going
They
to
don't
say
ride their bikes anymore.
bike store
Bike
owners.
store owners. Exactly. That's exactly it. But it's the same way. And Molly, you got into this too. Like, you're covering the sport. You're writing your book. You're doing all the things. You're writing all of these books. You're doing all of this
All the
stuff
books.
that relates to cycling, and then trying to actually enjoy whatever discipline it might be, and running and whatever else, you find yourself not really having time for it or even enjoying it anymore, because it truly is a job. And so that's kind of like this discovery process, I guess, I'm going through also this year. I in my head, I'm like, maybe I'll race again. I haven't really raced since like
participate.
don't
Yeah,
even
you
know.
can
Yeah,
participate.
like 2010, I think was the last time I really did a race that I was so that's kind of where I'm at. And that's what I, again, I still am super interested in everything that's going on at the top of the sport. But I feel like in what we do, CX hairs and everything else, maybe we've neglected the rest of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get
Yeah.
back to
Which is
some of that.
sort of, yeah, and that was what we were like, well, we talk a big game, but then like we're not going to the local race, and so that's we're trying to do it this year and support that. So,
Well, last year we just got invited to this one in Toronto, Christie Cross, and it's just like at
Mm,
this park in downtown Toronto. And we went, and it was like 2008 cyclocross, like at its finest, was what I would say the vibe was. There were, the serious masters with the like very expensive bikes, but then there were like the punk kids that like literally were on like the city bikes because they had a city
they
bike
did an
network,
unsanctioned, whatever our Toronto bikes are called, it doesn't matter.
Dixie
But
bikes or
yeah,
something. Yeah.
they had like, I don't, they kept saying it was like it was sponsored by them, but I don't think it was. But how cyclocross is that?
Like,
yeah, and when we were coming into this sport, and I don't think this culture or counterculture gets enough credit for this in the Mid-Atlantic, on the East Coast. The people who were driving cyclocross were bike messengers, were fixie kids, was all of that, were hipsters, was all of that cultural, like on the fringe that were like, hey, this is a cool, dumb thing. We can go drink some beer. We can go into the woods and smoke, do whatever we need to do, and also have fun racing this race. And it turns out some of us are pretty good. And then they got into it and became serious cyclists. And that was awesome. Not to say they weren't serious cyclists when they were doing that for their job, but it was coming from like an alley cat type thing, and it's interesting. Man and Nauman for our Grodio podcast just interviewed Dave Pryor, who, yeah, single speed world championships in Philadelphia, Belenky Junkyard Cross. And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, oh man, I had a bicycle film festival, film in about Belenky in the festival. I was like, and I was going on Vimeo. I was like, oops, I haven't subscribed to Vimeo in many years. Nobody can see this. So I re-upped that. So it's out there again. I was watching that. I was like, this was so cool. This was, and that is that culture. That was kind of that unseen, almost dirtbag in the best way possible culture that made cyclocross fun at that time, and really, I think, gave it the energy that we need to figure out, not necessarily in that group of people, but something like that to sort of give it that edge again, and make it dangerous in the most safe way to
make
go and do
cyclocross
this.
punk again.
Yeah,
Well, and
exactly. And that was my whole
arguably,
thing, is like that it lost that punk rock sentiment when everybody started showing up with, you had Cat 4s with two pit bikes. And
yeah.
that's when I was like, well, we're done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, luckily, a lot of those original hipsters and punk kids now have young kids that like can be coming to these races. And I'm laughing about the Dave Pryor thing because I just put up a picture of Peter, Dave, and I when Sierra Nevada Fat Tire Ale did the Junkyard Cross like beer commercial, and they brought Dave to
Right.
LA, and we happened
Yeah.
to like be in LA, so we were in it. And I feel like that might either be like the peak or the cliff, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Apex Mountain, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's hilarious because Amanda brought up the same thing because she was in that as well. Because
Right.
she's in LA.
Was she there as well?
She was,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Neat. There you go. Like you say, yeah, the same four people are still talking about cyclocross.
Exactly. Which actually that almost makes me a little sad now that you say that though, because I'm like, where is like the eager like 21, 22-year olds that like were covering bike racing? Am I just missing them? They're probably on TikTok. They're probably there and I'm just not seeing it. I hope they're there and I'm just not seeing it.
But it's also this, other things have taken over their interest. They're not any better or any worse. It's just that we sort of had this moment. It was in the zeitgeist, and now it's not anymore. And even we're three people who were in the middle of that, so it seemed like the center of the universe at the time. I'm sure
It was.
it was, but it's just this tiny little niche of cycling. It's just that niche has moved on.
I literally say it, I think, every episode, but there's an Adam Meyerson post-race interview where he says it's just stupid bike racing, but it's everything. And I every time I think about that, I like tear up a little bit. Okay, so all that to say, can we bring it back? And like, if so, do we think like grassroots, like these smaller things, like that is the way to kind of like start the comeback? We're gonna call it a comeback. I'm gonna call it a
Well, and
comeback.
maybe you don't have to think about it as comeback. I think Bill was right there that like it was very small, like in ultimate things too. We don't need to go back to the exact thing, but if we want that sport to go to the next level or to whatever is next for it, I think that is the consideration. So with your survey, Bill, was there, or just in your general thought, like is that the focus to like sort of take local and build upon, or what do you think?
I think, when I released the um whatever is lies, damn lies, and cyclocross, just the whole statistics on the sport, and just kind of seeing the decline and sort of what I was talking about with the move in the age and everything else. And the interesting thing about that is that people were like, yeah, 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 but you have this list of the biggest races, and my race is big too. Like they're still very protective about their cycling community, which I found kind of missed the point, but at the same time was kind of nice to see that people still care about these local scenes, and you'll see that they still exist. Like on this list of the top 20 events, or I got people from Chicago telling me, well, we didn't have our weekday series. That's the biggest series in the country. Who knows? Whatever. It's they get a ton of people to come out there for Tuesday night or whatever. Same as like, Fifth Street does. Same as they do in many other places. So I think that these scenes still exist. I think that we see it. It's definitely declined, and it's declined everywhere. And I think the hard thing to look at is you look at New England, and there's a huge drop off in New England. New England racing is not once it was. It's still amazing, and the people in there are still keeping it going. But the Grenoble, the not Grenoble, the KMC, the big races that we had before, the Holy Weeks. If you looked at those start lists compared to now, well, A, those races don't exist anymore, and B, the ones that do aren't getting the same. If you go back and you look at like nationals, that was God, I'm blanking on it wasn't Connecticut.
Hartford?
No,
Oh.
before then, KMC, what was that race?
Providence?
Providence,
KMC was just
thank you.
Providence, yeah.
So you look at that, 2006, something like that. There were 100 women starting in the elite race,
Yeah,
and
I remember
over 100.
2012, they had to do a new thing in the women's race where you had to have a UCI point to be in the elite race
Yeah.
because they actually had too many women racing. Like, my God, when have we ever had that problem in American cycling?
Yes.
Right. And now, Fayetteville, and I know we can talk about Fayetteville being Fayetteville. It's great. I'm glad that they have these resources. They put all this money into it. They have nationals, but it was not well attended last year. And you look at the elite fields, and it's become something that is no longer even an A race for the elites, even the ones that can win it. I mean, we had two people, we had Lydia Kuzak and we had Andrew Strohmeyer, who could have won elite national championships, who decided to stay in Europe instead of coming home. And that's, so I'm kind of all over the place, but that's kind of where we're hurting there. But I can, and the point is, I can say all of that. And at the same time, I think these local scenes are still uh, important to people. And I think the we needed to reframe the question, not how do we get this back to where it was. And I think, Peter, you were sort of on onto this, but let's just make sure that this survives. And let's just make sure that we still have this fun and this excitement. It doesn't have to take over the world. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but let it be an option. Let's figure out how to get these NICA kids who, for whatever reason, I know because it's a school year, but their season is the same as cyclocross in a lot of places, which is kind of a bummer because they won't do both. Let's get them into cyclocross. I had this idea for this shirt that on the front said "I love NICA" and on the back it said "Please race cyclocross."
I would buy so many of those shirts. Please make that shirt. I love that. I
So
mean,
you like trick people and then
yeah.
they get it on the back. Yeah.
My brain has just got like that just like blew my mind because I'm like, oh, you could do NICA laps where it is like mountain bike. Like everyone has to race their mountain bike. So we're not saying NICA kids need two bikes, but it's at least introducing them to the sport. Like there are
Even
so
as
many.
part of their weekend or
Yeah.
something when they're
Yeah.
like a weekend race. Yeah.
And I think I'm not in the NICA world. I don't know how it works. I don't know any of the administration of NICA, but just from what I've heard from people who have tried to introduce these things is they have a good thing and they're protective of it. So it's hard to get them to kind of go out of their system or to even recommend their constituents go out of their system.
Right. Because there is always that chance that, yes, a kid finds cyclocross and loves it and then ends up leaving NICA, which I mean is like a positive for bike racing in general, but not great for NICA attendance. Um, Understandable. And it, like, I guess, yeah, that is like maybe cycling's fatal flaw is to some extent, like we have a bit of a scarcity mindset, I would say, like almost no matter who you're talking about, race directors, media, bike companies, sponsorships. There's only so much money to go around in the bike scene, and that makes it hard.
Yeah, and it means that the people who race have to decide where they're going to be able to race the longest, especially if you look at North American riders, and for them it's going to be split between, I mean, historically between the road and mountain bike. There definitely this again, talking about Adam Myerson, who just is going to lose what little hair he may have more from hearing this, but the kid that's like, I want to be a gravel racer, that comes to him for coaching, which I think, yeah, he dies a little inside every time he hears that. But that's a reality too. How long that will be a reality, I don't know. But as far as the mountain and the road goes, those are viable alternatives, and we've seen great success from riders who have gone from cyclocross and continue to. I mean, you look at it right now. Look at that CCB team. It's all cyclocross riders, and some of them are like moving on and getting rides in Europe and doing bigger and better things. And I think it is the greatest thing in the world, and I love all of it. But without that, you can go and through rosters like that of these women's teams, and a lot of them started racing cyclocross as their first event. So it's
Or even
something that,
included it, yeah. Because I mean, that was
yeah,
the original base, was that it was just between, like it sort of was
yeah,
bridged that, winter period and people would race it. But yeah, I mean, as a coach and like we have our local team as well, like to me, it's just like, well, it's the weather turns bad and we can set this up in a park because our local trails get pretty muddy, and away you go. So I think framing it as that to me makes a lot of sense, but it's just like, how do we activate that and make that something that people jump with?
Well, I think a lot of our listeners, like let's be honest, are gravel racers at this point. So, Bill, I would love if you could maybe talk about how cyclocross can be great for a gravel racer in their off season. What do you think?
I think that they're both, it's what we're talking, who are we talking about, is the first thing. And I think that, you know, people have heard me go on about this theory that who knows if it's right, but it's just fun to talk about always, that every like discipline in the US gets a decade. Like mountain bike had Norba in the 90s. Mountain biking was going to be the biggest thing ever. It was never going away. A lot of Americans had issues with how things were being done in Europe at that time, and decided not to sort of, enter into that fray. Same thing was going on in road racing and stuff like that. So, mountain biking sort of had its day, and then it sort of fell off a little bit. And then cyclocross had its decade. We can talk about Louisville Worlds, I think was the pinnacle of that. That is when it was like, we've made it. A few years down the road from that, we have 3 World Cups that are in the US. Holy cow, that is huge. Such a great thing. This is never going away. Well, it turns out people were like, well, it's never going away, so I don't have to go every year. And then it went away. Gravel has been around for a long time. I mean, I remember people going out to Kansas when we were doing like these gravel races in Pennsylvania, like Hilly Billy Rebay and that kind of stuff, and everybody was getting back from what is now Unbound, and racing that. So it's been around there for a while. But as far as the Lifetime Grand Prix goes, as far as it at the top level, it's coming up on its decade too. And I can think I want it to succeed. As I said, I produced this gravel podcast with that Amanda Nauman hosts. I want this to survive, but I think you can see these fissures that are happening a decade into competitive gravel. That doesn't answer your question at all. So to answer your question, I think that it is something that you can, the thing about gravel, I think that people really like is it's kind of a checklist sport. Like there are not a lot of huge events that people are going back to every year. Some of them do. It's like a class reunion for them. They want to go back. They want to do Unbound. They want to do it again. They want to do Mid-South, whatever it is. And they go back. Leadville. For most people, Leadville being a great example, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to say, I did this. I know Leadville's not more mountain bike, not gravel, but that type of thing.
No, but it's a bucket list race. Yeah, and you're right. There's the person who goes there once and checks it off, and then there's the person that like they're Leadville for life, and they're going to try and do a million belt buckles over there. Whatever,
right? And I think that those people are people who, for whatever reason, got tired of the competition aspect of it. And I think that that is what I want to promote, in that cyclocross is the best sport. I don't know of any other sport where you can come in 23rd place in a field of 35 and know that you beat the person who's in 25th place, who always beats you, and you're like, that was my best race of the year. That matters. I'm glad it's not a crit where they just score everybody together when you come across the line, and you get people, and like people will sit there and get, make fun of the Cat 5 who is complaining about their placing in 49th place. And I'm like, stop it. That's important. That 49th place is hugely important, because maybe they got 55th place the week before, and you just sort of accidentally, missed whatever the timing, and you had them at 60th place. They're like, I worked my butt off to get up that much more. And that's hugely important. And it's a short race, 40 minutes, whatever. And I'm done, and I got a better result, and I beat Joe. And those were the two things that were huge. And it's awesome that the same, Cat 5 guy has won every race and refuses to upgrade. That's whatever. It doesn't matter, because I got my best result of the season, and I beat Joe. So, and I don't think you get in many other sports that happens, where you can have a result that in the grand scheme of things doesn't look great on paper, but for you personally is everything. And that's what I want to bring back, that sense of like, oh my God, this is great. And that's where series used to be important. You go, okay, well, I got 2 points here. I'm moving up the series, even
and the Cross Results website is, I think, really like embodies this really, right?
Great.
That you know who your nemesis is, even if, like you say, you are just like battling for 50th place or something.
Yeah, I mean, another person who's like on it, like Colin, just
Colin's amazing. Yeah.
In his spare time building that. I know he made it into his job and bike reg and everything else, but that was just a passion project, and it continues to be. I mean, on his own, he's still like playing around with those numbers. But it was huge. You wanted to go. You were mad at him because he was 2 minutes late and, uploading results because the promoter sent a PDF instead of an Excel file. It's like, those are the
we
things
all
that
hate
are
those promoters. Let's be honest here.
That's the thing that just like was so important. And I think that's the main thing, is like, how do you find that importance again? How do you make it this thing that we just fictionally created as being important? How do you make that important again? So that would be my plea for these people who have sort of moved over to just racing gravel events, that maybe you're like, honestly, I didn't like cleaning my bike every week. I understand. But at the same point, you don't have to do it all. Just go pick a race or two and go do it. Again, it's 40 minutes. You'll be done and home before lunch.
Well, and the skills transfer is huge. Like, I've been doing a bit of like gravel clinics this year, and I'm like, this just would be easier if we just did a cyclocross clinic. Like, you would come away with a lot more stuff. We wouldn't have to pretend like we're going on rides and stuff. If we just did this in one park, we could sort of really make this happen. And I think the racing for a lot of gravel people would just make any concern about these segments and off-road bits, or we call them no winter maintenance sections, like I think a lot of gravel racers would come out of a cyclocross season and just be like, yeah, they're not a problem anymore.
Yeah, it's also, you are in these gravel races and it really, where you're dealing with flat tires and you're dealing with all these mechanical issues, if you know how to ride in a rut, if you know how to pick a line, if you know how to be steady and not panic once you're in that rut or that line, you're going to keep airing your tires. You're going to keep your chain on your bike. And these are the things that you learn just by racing cyclocross.
Even pack skills, right? Like, while you might be in even a bigger pack in a gravel race, usually the gravel race doesn't immediately throw a U-turn, go across
50 meters in, yeah.
4 different surfaces into a set of barriers or something like that, right? So there's obviously like more stuff there that you could get used to. And again, coming back to gravel, you'd be in really good shape, I think. Yeah. Okay, maybe switch gears here. Bill, are you hosting the biggest cyclocross race in North America?
No. That honor.
You just realized you are.
No.
Oh no.
That honor goes to an MFG race, Woodland Park, that is not sanctioned by USA Cycling, in Seattle at the zoo.
Okay.
That is the biggest race in North America.
Okay. And how do you know, like when we say big, you're doing in like number of participants? Like how big is it?
Over 1,000, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
For one day. So they beat us.
God,
They beat us by like 100 or so for the weekend. And then you're talking about, DCCX and the Pan American Championship, which was the second biggest, first sanctioned, and in North America last year. So yeah, we're doing that one more time.
Okay, excellent. So people should try and get over to that or down to that or wherever direction you have to go to get to that.
What is the date for that? Let's just put it in.
Yeah.
Put it in here.
November 7th and 8th. 7th is the Pan American Championship, and then the 8th is DCCX, which is a UCI C2 race, but also I think the biggest local race, USA Cycling race in the country.
All right, so if my Canadian bid for making the World Championships team at Nationals the week before doesn't work, I just flip passports and come down to the US and see what happens there.
Yeah. If not, then you can swap to Masters and see how you do there. Yeah.
That's right. And if you do it under a Canadian license, it's much cheaper.
Oh, bonus.
Because
do you pay in your currency?
No, because you all are not.
Are you going to say something really offensive about Canadians? What are you doing?
No, I'm going to say something really offensive about Americans, and I'm just trying to couch it in the best way. USA Cycling charges $240 for an international plus race license. That if you are racing Pan American Championships, you can use once, and then it expires at the end of the year, and you don't use it for anything else. I was trying to work something out. They might extend it to 13 months, so you get 2 PanAms out of it or whatever. But at the same time, you have to buy that license. Canadians don't. You can just use your regular race license, and that is fine. The UCI, the bottom line is the UCI does not require any extra payment to race this international event, yet USA Cycling requires payment for them to allow you to register for this event. Not my favorite policy in the world. So you are putting that bit of gatekeeping on Pan American Championships for American racers. I'm sorry, my video just went out. I don't know why. I might be back.
I'm a little afraid Cycling is like listening, and it's like, all right, get this guy.
Bill, and you're speaking more like if someone didn't have a UCI license to start off with. Is that the situation? Like if I had.
So this doesn't apply to all of our elites. Doesn't apply because they're racing in Europe. They're doing everything. They're all set. They have to pay for it anyway. It's part of their job, right? U23s, juniors, they're all doing it. They're doing all of these races and going to Europe. So it makes sense for them. But if you are my neighbor who lives in Washington, D.C., and it's like, oh, this is international event, that'd be amazing. I'd love to do it. Well, there are a couple obstacles that she would have to overcome. First, she has to buy this license just for this race, plus pay. One thing, we keep our entry fees low. Again, coming out of that kind of more punk upbringing, we're not overcharging for these things. PanAm's cost $70. That's less than a USCX race. The race the next day costs $55.
Wow.
That's a local race, and this is another UCI race. So we're not gouging people. We don't charge big teams for parking except for like $50 just so we know who's showing up. We're not asking for $1,000 for parking. We're trying to keep these costs down. Yet we have this. Hey, for my neighbor again, she wants to race a Masters race. She has to buy this license. Plus, now, and this isn't USA Cycling's fault, this is the UCI's fault. She has to have a bike that is deemed acceptable to race with a sticker on it that says UCI approved frame.
And good
Or
news,
she
they're not
can't,
making them right now
yeah,
because
or you can't race. So if you have a 2-year-old bike, you can't race it at PanAm's. So that's another gate that's being kept. This is all to say that we had the biggest USA cycling race weekend in the country, and we only had 200 and some people race PanAm's because of all of this gatekeeping that happening, which meant our local race plus UCI C2 race had 800 people at it
wow.
on Sunday. It was such a mismatched, mixture of people that were racing this. Why? Because they didn't have to do all of these things. They didn't have to buy this license. They didn't have to have this bike, or will this year. I mean, I expect less people this year because of it. And it's just that part is just a huge bummer to me. And it's something that I think is so easily fixable. Again, does not apply to our Canadian or Mexican or whoever friends, who want to come to Pan American Championships, just the Americans. But yeah, that's the type of thing that I'm like, there we're just like shooting ourselves in the foot over this sport, where we could have this bucket list type event like a Leadville, where you said, I raced an international competition, Pan American Championship. It's in my backyard. The one reason that we get all these people, yeah, I think we have a great event. The other thing, we live in the DMV. We have many, 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 many people who race bikes and a huge density, and it's easy to get to. And we got 3 airports that are within an hour, so it's like, it's the easiest event to come and race, and people do that. But at the same time, I wish we could find a way that more people could get this experience of racing on Saturday at the international event.
Yeah, open it up somehow. Now at the local one, your Sunday one, we'll call it the local one, but the C2 combined with this local event, I show up with my mountain bike. Like what would be the options to race with, someone has like something that's not a cyclocross bike per se. Like what have you done as far as an event organizer to let these people participate? Like how would that sort of slot in?
It's a USA cycling event, so you're still going to come under those requirements, but that is one place that they have done a good job and have loosened it up a bit. You don't need 33 millimeter tires. You can race, I think it's 40 something like that, normal road tire, with, and you can have a flat bar bike as long as you don't have mountain bike extensions, which nobody's used since the 90s. So, but it's still in the rules. And yeah, it's basically race whatever you want to race, and that's kind of it, and I think that especially in the Cat 5 race, you will be able to get by with what you can. You read the rules, make sure that you follow them, but
Yeah,
at the same time, it's a much lower barrier to entry. You could go buy a $50 used bike and race it.
Once you get into like a higher level, like masters category, though, there would be like the usual measuring of tires and stuff, or like where does that start?
No, I don't think it does, unless somebody comes in there with like a fat tire bike and they're like, you can't do that. I think as long as, and I'm sorry, I don't have the regs in front of me,
Oh.
whatever the USA Cycling, width is for tires, but there is not somebody at the starting gate with a jig the same way there is for the UCI races, making sure that your tire fits.
Right, and the UCI makes sense, but yeah, I guess more it's like it's not so much the fat bike or even the mountain bike really, although I think that like it would be nice to welcome those people too who maybe like short track mountain biking or something. But it's more I think we're talking towards these large amount of gravel people that have essentially cyclocross bikes and maybe just don't want to change their 40s or 45s out, like can they hop into this masters race is sort of the question. And
Yeah,
we're wrestling with this too locally. It's just like there are a lot of people with gravel bikes.
yeah, I don't want to start clickety clacking on my keyboard here, but I'm sure we could check and see what it is. But I think that as long as you can find tires that are still pretty wide that are going to be acceptable in a USA cycling race. I mean, we get a lot of people out there racing mountain bikes. Then I honestly, again, my blind spot to not paying attention to this because I'm more paying attention to elites in the past is something I probably should pay more attention to. But I think that it's pretty easy to come up with some tires that are going to work. There was a Reddit thread the other day where somebody was asking if it would be okay, they do okay racing their Canyon Grail in a cyclocross race, and they were worried about like the triangle and this kind of stuff. And I replied to them, I was like, look, few and far between you will find a race in North America that you have to shoulder your bike. It's a great skill to have. Everybody should learn how to shoulder their bike. It looks super cool too. However, I don't know of one race that I can think of in the US. In Europe, absolutely. If you're at Holston, you're not pushing your bike up that incline. But here, you can carry or push your bike over most everything, and it might cost you a second. It might not, because by the time somebody who's in your category is shouldering and unshouldering a bike and getting back on, you may be right with them as well. So I think it's those type of places where people overthink this, that I'm not able to shoulder my bike on this, so I need a brand new bike. No, you don't. Your bike's fine. In fact, put 2 water bottles on it so you can't shoulder it all, and then you're actually not like dehydrating by the rate through the race at all. It's all good. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing, I think, where that nerdy hand wringing still exists, which I'm all for. I love it. I am that, but at the same time, we need to be able to just let that go and go race our bikes.
Yeah, I think so. I love that you went that way because I was sort of like when we had you on 8 years ago, there would have been, we talked a bit about like, should you be running in the preseason? And I think the shouldering is probably even like the better question because I do think that that's evolved a lot just with the courses and the lightness of the bikes and yeah, I don't know, even the athletes, I think, but you see very little use of that anymore, unless there's a long stair set, like you say, at the highest level, but in the amateurs, very little.
I mean, it's the crazy thing. Like, we used to talk about Vermeersching, which just because Johnny Vermeersch used to do, where he would swing his whole bike around, and the bikes are so light now, like you can carry your bike with the hood and like swing it around, and it's gonna get up there. The other thing, the shouldering thing, I also compare that to like riding planks. It's an awesome skill to have. If you are racing in a UCI race in Europe and you don't have that skill, you're going to have to work a little harder to keep up with it because it's not a novelty anymore. It's something that all of these riders know how to do and know how to do well. In an amateur race, everybody loves it. You'll get cheered, but you don't need to do it. They're not faster mainly. And also, it's like we don't have Euro barriers here. The rule says 40 centimeters. Most promoters out there are like, well, that's the minimum, 40 centimeters, and also the maximum. So we're going to put these super tall barriers out there, and they're tougher to get over.
Yep. Yep. Okay. We've talked about like cyclocross back in the day and all this stuff. If you could bring one component from like the cyclocross races of old and like anything from like the race to the atmosphere to the bikes to the whatever, what would you bring back? Like what should promoters be thinking about like adding to their race that like brings that?
Oh, what should promoters bring? See, this is
Or
kind of a
rider?
two-tier. Well, no, because this is like a two-tiered question because I was just Taylor Jones and I were just talking about this the other day because here's the whole backstory. Casio puts out these like limited G-Shock watches all the time. They have like these promotional things. They'll make a couple hundred of them and then they'll just go away. And then I was like, and there was one that came out like about a month ago and it was a Toyo Tires G-Shock watch. And it was mainly because of their, motor racing type stuff. But what I should have bought it, but at the same time, I didn't want to pay like $200, even though now they're being sold by resellers for like 1,000. But that's all beside the point. The point is, Toyo Tires once sponsored cyclocross. I think they sponsored one of the series, like the Super Prestige, and they had a Toyo Tire feature at all of the races that year where they dug these car tires into the ground on like an incline, and it was almost like planks, but they were rubber tires, and they put like three of them, like 3 rows. So you had to like go over these humps, over these tires, and it was sort of the Toyo Tire feature at every race. It was the dumbest, greatest thing ever. And then the UCI, of course, came in and were like, well, that's not that's not a natural obstacle. Yeah, so you can't do
so
that.
like why?
So I guess like
I feel
weird,
like they should.
Weird obstacles. As, and here's my tip for race organizers. This is how you get this to be allowed at your race. Because the officials, if you're walking around the officials, they have some discretion of what can go. There are rules, and then there are rules. So what you do when you're setting up your course and you have this feature in your course, you're like, I don't know, that's kind of borderline, but I really want this feature. What you do is that you have that feature, and then somewhere else in your course, you set up a feature that is just ridiculous, stupid, something no one would ever do. It's dangerous. It's like, how could you even think to do this? And when you're walking around with the official, they'll go through and you'll see all this thing. You put that one first, and they'll see that, and then they'll see like, Bill, what are you doing? You know you can't do this. There are saw blades in the middle of the course. You can't have that in a cyclocross race. And like, and I'll be like, you're right. I don't know what we were thinking. Well, absolutely.
Dave Pryor told me to do it.
That's right. We'll take that out. And for a lot of officials, they're like, all right, I did it. I took something out. I showed I know the rules and it's superior. And then they'll get to your other thing that you want to have in there. And that's kind of like maybe not. And they'll probably, maybe they won't. They're, in most instances, they'll be like, all right, well, that's okay, especially compared to Sawblade City back there. So that's my race. That's my local race organizer tip. Put something dumb in there so you can keep the thing that's borderline.
I think that's correct, though. I think it like keeps people like maybe they're always coming back because of the obstacles, or like you never know what you're gonna get, and there's a bit, you're keeping it fresh. I think that's a good. I don't even think that's necessarily like looking back. Like I think that's like looking forward, especially at the local level. You're gonna have a lot of leeway.
You want to market the future too, right? You can name courses or events you've been to, and you know them because of features. For today's races, I think of Charm City. I think of, well, two. I think of Mansion Hill, but I also think of that ridiculous flyover they always have. And I know it's there. I think of King's Cross. I know the camelbacks. I know that these are something that people are looking forward to. Even like a Major Taylor in Indianapolis has a dual slalom section of their course, which is just silly, but it's something that you remember. And I really think that's what you need. Fayetteville has those stairs. You need something that sets your course apart from other courses. I know not everybody has that luxury. If you have, a park that you're able to use, and that's where you can have a cyclocross race, and that's where the community comes to, please continue to do that. You don't need a marquee feature. But if you can find something, or you can build something, you can create something, you can just, use marketing skills and create something out of nothing, then that's something that's going to draw people in. Oh, I have to go race this because it's X, or I love this race because of this feature. And that gives your race something that sets it apart from every other race.
No, I think that's 100% right. And I think even the most boring of courses, or bland of courses, let's say, you can still add something that's like, let's call it Instagrammable, because that's the phrase we all understand now, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like anything that's hard to ride. It can just look really cool in the pictures. And I think that's what people are missing now when you see cyclocross pictures. Like, you don't have that, pageantry to it.
Yeah, I remember Providence used to have like a jump. And like for me as like a mid-packer, right? Like now I can get into the photos, and like Tim Johnson didn't know how to jump, and then I could jump. And so I'm in all these photos, and it's like,
you just wanted to get that in.
I mean, nothing against Timmy J, but So yeah, I think that's like an awesome thing. Like you say, like if you have a flat grass, these courses exist. It's just a big park with flat grass.
Well, I think
Then
about
yeah, how can we spice this
we
up?
did this like 24-hour mountain bike thing a couple of years ago. We were like volunteering at it, and like our part of our volunteer thing was like we set up this like light show in the woods, and it was literally just hanging lanterns on trees.
Yeah.
And if you ask people about what they remember from that race, almost all of them like, oh, the lights in the trees was amazing at night. And it's like it was like $100 in supplies. It was not.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we think about like I have two ideas that sort of looking forward that people can take or leave. E-bike categories,
Oh,
cyclocross.
I'm not against it. I honestly think that if it's just all e-bikes and they're out there racing, then
Yeah.
why not?
Like as a, almost like an
I
open class. Like I don't know if you watch any snowmobile racing or stuff, but usually there's like the stocks and then the mods. And then I was like, what if we at noon just had, e-bike, full gas?
if that if
Maybe you'd
that
have to
brings
change the barriers. I don't know.
if that brings more people to it, then I'm 100% for it. I don't, I mean, and let them. I think open's perfect because then you don't have the thing that happens in these mountain bike e-bikes where they're, oh, well, they let that, motor in even though it's not compliant, or they said it's compliant, or this or that. You have all these, again, dirty arguments over the minutia. But yeah, it's even have, I'm all for, if you're going to have a USA cycling sanctioned event, uh having categories that are outside of that, like this would be. Have a, you just we do these garage races, and one of the categories is anything goes, and get people on skateboards, we get people on city bikes, we get people on unicycles, get
love
people
it.
on
Yeah.
just anything. And it's not really a race, it's just go, and people show up in costume and everything else. But you can do that. DCCX, we used to have a tandem race, and it actually got pretty big where we'd have 20 bikes out there. It
Became
was,
dangerous. Yeah.
yeah, it was stupid. Like Joe Dombrowski was out there winning tandem races
Because I was
before he
also
was
like,
like
okay, and then
racing
what
in a Tour
about
de France.
I know you love mountain bike racing and short track, so then I was like, well, what about probably there's some areas in the world where you have a lot of mountain bikers, maybe like a Wisconsin type area where there's like this Wars series. Like, would those folks come out to a cyclocross race if they could race? It's just a short track mountain bike race on the course, no barriers, whatever. Um,
I
I
love
think
that.
that works.
I leave the barriers in there. Those guys can ride them, and women. I mean, they're like, like do
Yeah,
that.
just
Like
funny.
have a short track. Have a short track. I would love to have a short track race at every cyclocross race. I mean, the problem is, you're coming into hours in the day, with extra categories. But that stuff's great. One of these things that has kept crits alive in places is having a 5K before it,
So
right?
we do not understand why more people don't do a cross country running race the
Yeah.
night before even. And Christy Cross actually
Yep,
does
they
that.
do.
They have like
For
they do more of like a beer mile kind of vibe, but like people love it.
as you say, it's I guess hipster or whatever, but yeah, it's pretty competitive actually.
I mean, I could see, it's a bigger event, so we're setting up for the whole weekend. We're out there the days before the event setting up, for PanAms, and we have the property for that time. I understand it's a luxury that a lot of organizers don't have, but if if we weren't already like spread
Pan.
so thin and already, trying to support teams and UCI races before and after this event and promote a race, having like a 5K on Friday after we're done setting up would be pretty sweet. And it's so low maintenance. I mean,
Exactly.
just like people show up and they do it. Just have to pay your scorer for another day, and you're pretty much done.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, honestly, you can even just do it like Strava. Like you have to
Yeah.
upload your time to Strava, and that's how your timing gets done. Or, I mean, it's 5K. It's like if you do like 2 laps, just have someone doing like timing by hand. Do it like very low key because I don't think 5K people really expect like
Right.
fantastic timing.
Yeah, and it's also, you can set it up. I know like Gravel Worlds does this. You can set up omniums too if you do that. If you already have it, then you can entice people to come back. You can give them a reduced, entry fee to go race a cyclocross race, and then you can
Exactly.
have an omnium category as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and Mid South Gravel does that with the run and the bike, and
Right. Yeah.
there's these people that do these things.
Like the idea of a 5K and then a 40-minute race. That seems
Yeah, that
way
seems much
more,
much more
that seems
tenable.
much more, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, look, I love the long distance runs, but like the back to back is just a lot.
Okay, well, we've bellyached
solved
and,
it.
and
We've solved
talked
it.
towards. We've forced some ideas. We've said what we're doing. I think that's pretty good. Bill, what can we expect, from CX Hairs over this season? You have any big plans as far as the podcast now that you've done this retrospective look back? What are you thinking for the season with the podcast?
I think I have a couple more folks that I'm talking to before the season gets rolling, kind of in that same vein, in the let's bring fun back into the sport type, plus a little bit of a look back and seeing what people are doing in different communities. And then I think it's gonna focus back on racing, and the stuff that I think that most of the people that listen to that podcast are tuning in for is what's going on with the racing starting, for the first half of the season in North America and then transitioning over to Europe. On top of that, I got some other just big idea projects planned that I don't want to talk about until they actually happen. I know how that goes. But hopefully maybe we can come back later, because I think it will appeal to both of you what I have
Ooh.
in
Awesome.
the work. So something that we can look forward
Anytime,
to
and certainly
chatting down the line.
not 8 years down the road, hopefully, as well.
Yes,
So
very
yeah,
fun.
yeah. So yeah, we'll link to Wide Angle Podium. We'll link to PanAm CXDC.com, the CX Hairs podcast, also to that recent Dave Pryor episode, I'm sure is good. And then we also mentioned the survey, so we'll link to that as well. Anything that I missed?
I think that about does it. It was really great to catch up with you all again.
Yeah.
So fun. Yes. Hopefully we'll see you at one of these soon too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.